Hey everyone, Brett Miller once again, Metal Guitar Academy. So another impromptu lesson here. So talking about why you don't need a lot of guitar scales to solo. So that might sound like sacrilege, because you may have seen that book that's probably still in print called The Guitar Grimoire. I know when I was growing up, I and a lot of other guitar players and students had it. It's this black book, and it had about 10 billion scales, what looked like 10 billion scales in there. And I think the problem with that kind of thing, plus a lot of instruction, leads people to believe, leads guitar students to believe that it's this daunting Herculean task that you have to learn all of these different scales and all kinds of different crazy arpeggios and jazz things, whatever, to be able to solo effectively. Well, that's just not true. In fact, there's really just three, what I would call three big pillars of things that you need to memorize on the guitar. And just about anything that you can think of is going to be using those or just slight variations on those. So what are those? Major scale fingerings, minor pentatonic fingerings, and triads. I'm not necessarily talking about the cage system. I'm talking about these very small, kind of little triads like this, just all over the neck. So I'm going to illustrate this today by playing over or soloing over a one chord track. It's a kind of a cool chord. You've probably heard this. Okay. Even if people don't know a lot of theory or anything, basically this is just an F major bar chord, and it has a couple of open strings. I'm opening up my finger here. My cat likes this chord apparently too. Okay, so chord you hear in a lot of songs. I'll go over a little bit, theory-wise what that's all about. But the point is, we don't need some fancy, crazy scale to play over this. I'm going to demonstrate just using those three very basic major scale, minor pentatonic, and triad arpeggio ways to do it. Okay, so first of all, I found this track. This is a one chord backing track, just to give credit on YouTube. That's the channel, and this is single chord F major 7 sharp 11 ballad. So for example, C major scale. Now again, most people look at this chord and they think, oh, F major 7 sharp 11. There must be some F scale that I have to learn to do this, but there's not. Here is a C major scale. I'm just playing through the 6 fingerings, how I like to teach it, of major scale. I'm just thinking as I move C major. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over to minor pentatonic, good old-fashioned E minor pentatonic. And now a little bit of E minor arpeggio. It's a little triad shapes. Okay? All works very nicely if you were to put all those together. Okay, just a little bit of putting that together. So what's going on here? Why does it work so well? Where all I really have to do is think about a few basic things. Well, those three big pillars, which are really just memorization, right? It's not, if you learn your major scale fingerings, you have to learn the fingerings. Same with the triads. It takes a while, but they're not these, indomitable things to worry about. It's really memorization. There has to definitely be some knowledge of music theory and notes, however applied, and this is where I really am bothered by these tricks and hacks kinds of BS that you see all the time, because yes, it takes longer to get a good foundation in the music and the theory, but when you do that, you start to, it becomes very obvious why these things work. It's not these thousand separate little pieces of minutia that you somehow have to memorize like a big Rolodex in your head. It all becomes very holistic, and you see very clearly why these things work. Okay, so as an example here, there's my F major 7 sharp 11 chord. Now, if we are aware, I'm not going to get into all the whys here, that would take way too long. But if we're aware when we see that chord symbol that the notes in it are F, A, C, E, and B, okay? And I'll put one other thing here, that the F major scale is these notes, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, F, okay? And there's a reason I'm going on in a second there, okay? We can understand where this major 7 and the sharp 11 comes from. Okay, so if you have an F major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the octave, right? The F. Okay. If you just keep going, this is in a nutshell where you get things like 9ths, 11ths, 13ths. Just keep going. Obviously, if F is like 8 or the octave, G is 9, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay. That's your, 10th note. There's a reason you never see 10th chords. It's part of the actual F major chord, okay, F, A, C. So it's already in the chord. But notice this, the B flat, that's the 11th note away from the root note, isn't it? Well, it's easier just to think of that as the same thing as the 4th note. All right, now, if we have a sharp 11, well, what do you do if you sharp or raise by a half step a B flat? You get a B. That's where, okay, that B in the chord comes from. Where does this E in the chord come from? Well, again, let's look at the root note. F is 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. E is the 7th. Now again, I'm kind of going through this kind of quick, but in a nutshell, that's where you get these numbers from. So in F major 7, the major 7 references the E, and the sharp 11 references, hey, that B flat, which is the 11th note away, but we're sharpening it, raising it to a B. So therefore, that's where we're getting the notes in this chord, okay? We got an F, another F, A, okay, we have C down here, that's our triad, like that. And then I've got the B, which is that sharp 11, and the E, so it's kind of an easy way to play this one, right? So the thing is, if we have a C major scale, because that's one of the scales I'm using here, all right? We don't have to deal with that B flat. Remember, the B flat's not going to work over this chord because in the chord there's a B, in the F major scale there's a B flat. So this has to do with modes. Again, I'm not going to go crazy with this, but just to show you, you don't need to know some crazy major 7 sharp 11 scale. Okay, there's a way that we can simply understand, hey, if I have a C major scale like this, boom, okay, notice F, there's an F in that scale. A, there's an A in that scale. C, there's a C in that scale. E, there's an E in that scale. B, that is 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes out of the 7 here that match up. Okay, so the scale I'm playing is C major scale. I don't need to think about this as, again, some crazy, what scale is going to match up with F major 7. Let me take an F major scale and alter some note. No. Okay, if you know how to play a C major scale all across the neck, you can use this. all right, to play this. And check this out. F major 9, sharp 11. Again, I can't go too exhaustively into this in a quick lesson here. But, okay, you start having too many notes in the chord. Just as guitar players, we cannot finger all the notes at once, right? We just kind of run out of fingers. Piano, it's one thing you can. But guitar, you can't. So you have to start making some choices. But check this out, major 9, okay? This F major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the octave, 9 is the G. Notice that's the second note here. Okay, that's also going to sound really great in this chord. So, again, I'm dealing with a little bit of the time limitations here, unfortunately, but okay, F, A, C, there's our major chord. E is our major 7th. Okay, G is the 9th. Okay, and then we have that B, which is that raised 11th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes. Again, it's very hard to play voicings on the guitar that involves 6 notes. Unless you get lucky, you can do a bar chord or an open string. Here, we probably really can't do that too easily. So maybe we could if we took a second, but most chords you can't. So the deal is, look, 6 notes out of the 7 notes in this major scale are in this chord. So this scale is going to work great, C major, right? Now, why are we using the E minor pentatonic scale? Well, let me put that up there a little bit for you. There you go. Okay, so 6 out of the 7 notes here are going to be found in that scale. So why are we using the E minor pentatonic? Well, again, if we look at the notes here, there's a hidden E minor pentatonic scale within this C major scale. So we have the notes in an E minor pentatonic. E, G, A, B, D. That's the pentatonic. Let's put E again there on the end. Of course, you find those notes here in the C major scale, right? It's kind of hidden in there. There's a couple other pentatonic scales in here. The reason we're using this one, that B, is really a kind of characteristic sounding note here, right? That's that sharp 11 note. And that B is found in the E minor pentatonic scale. Again, there's a couple others in here, but this is the relevant one because of that, right? So, if we're playing over this track with this chord, E minor pentatonic is going to work great. It's not some crazy exotic scale that you have to learn. Many of you probably already know how to play an E minor pentatonic. I move it out here and there, but okay. So I could take an E minor pentatonic if I felt like throwing in the F. Okay, now I'm just thinking of this as an E minor pentatonic. So you get a little bit of like a cool phrasing kind of a deal there. Phrasing is really all about what you're doing with the notes, right? So if you got a set of notes like that, and you're phrasing it like a 2-note per string pentatonic, you get a lot of cool possibilities. If you just think of it as that plus an F, you can still use a lot of those cool 2-note per string kind of phrases. But now, right? That's not a separate scale. You see I'm driving at? That's not like some scale you look up in a book and say, that's the hexamoblobblian scale with F as the root. No, it doesn't make any sense to think that way. You want to use something you already know, like an E minor pentatonic scale. Right? Now, I know this is not the most exciting. Everyone wants like some kind of special trick, right? Looking at this video going, give me some kind of trick and hack. There is none. You got to know your E minor pentatonic scale all across the neck. You have to have some of the basic theory knowledge to look at the notes in this chord and basically go, that really matches up with this scale that I already know. And that's not some overnight thing, but nor is it, again, a Herculean task to do so. Just need some good guidance to see those connections, right? Now, E minor. Rewind this a little bit. E minor arpeggio or E minor triad. Why does that work? Well, again, if you know the notes in the chords, and no one is going to just magically impart that knowledge to you through touching you on the forehead, okay? It just takes a little bit of some study. But again, it's not crazy hard. There's, building chords is kind of a 1 or 2 lesson thing, honestly, with me anyway, with my private students. It takes practice to have it sink in, but the concepts, the way I like to teach it, they're not difficult. So if we look at this here, okay, let's come back up here. This one right here. In fact, let's go to this chord right here, the major 9 sharp 11, because we do have all the stacked up notes. Well, if we're aware that an E minor chord are the notes E, G, B, which it is, again, I know I can't just get into all the details here today, but E, G, B is an E minor chord. Okay? If we're playing that, E, G, B, another B, another E, that's what the chord is. Okay? So if you know how to play a miniature E minor chord all over the guitar neck, which is what we call the triads, all right, you've got basically half of this big chord that you can then play using a lot of cool little kind of licks and phrases. Okay, in other words, that E minor chord triad is built into the bigger one. There's some other ones in here too. I'm picking this one because it has some of the cool notes, the 9th and the 11th and the 7th. Okay, so if we come back here, that's why this is going to sound pretty cool. Again, I know it's sort of an overview here. My point is not to teach you all the theory here today. I just want you to understand you don't need 10 billion exotic things. I'm doing the 3 very basic pillars here: minor pentatonic, major scale, and knowing triads. Okay, so for example, here's a nice little E minor. A little bit out of tune is why I keep doing my pseudo bar there. Okay, another one there, and you can learn these, all over the neck, of course. So any set of 3 strings, I much prefer that to cage system, honestly, because it's well, anyway, maybe that's a topic for something else. But if we're playing those, start with this one here. Resolving a little bit there, that note, but the meat of this sounds pretty neat. I will combine it with an F major here, just for the heck of it. Because the F major is also found in there, by the way. So I'm using just 2 little triads here. To play with that. So whether you're jamming, improvising, or whether you're writing something and you got a little crazier where you're starting to do like, was tapping things, whatever. Being able to use just those 3 ideas, you can come up with some really cool phrases over this chord here. And we don't need to approach it like it's some exotic scale. Okay, a little E minor pentatonic. So say we had a, I'm just going to make something up here. We're going to have now mixing and matching it with the C major scale would add a little bit more, you know, variety to this too. So we don't want to overdo the E minor thing, but just to show you, you can think of that way. All right. So anyway, I think that's enough here for today. The takeaway is not that you have to memorize the notes in the F major 7 here, but it's that you do not have to know 10 billion scales. In fact, that's, I think, counterproductive to think there's always something that matches up to something else, because what it does is it forces guitar players to think on this surface level. Whereas if you understand the underlying things, how to build chords, how do modes really work, what are they based on, okay? Pentatonic scales, where do they really come from? If you know those things, it all really just becomes very obvious when you're looking at a chord and you know the notes in there, that you could use all these elements All right, so I'm just having fun playing now, so I'm going to stop this. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Again, I'm Brett Miller with Metal Guitar Academy, and I'll be back with you soon.